rise of industry and emissions has led to the air becoming increasingly toxic.
Oh, okay, good.
People of the underground deserve to breathe.
The people of the underground deserve to breathe. Okay. Interesting art style. This art style though. This is what we didn't saw, right? Because they were in this area before in episode 2. I mean, you cannot deny the fact. I mean, that shot of Caitlyn. Like, you cannot deny the fact that Caitlyn is using, I would say, unethical warfare. Oh god. I think the show has done a good job at establishing the unpredictability of Jinx, so that when moments like that happen, immediately in my mind is like, oh god, is it a bomb? Is it a bomb? Is it one of those toys that Jinx has?
Thanks. I thought I was a goner. Name's Hinot.
Yeah, Hinot's the guy that Smeech sent in episode 2.
It's the gray. It gives me that.
Tell us how you wound up here.
Hey, wait. Jinx is off the rails. Even for her. She's got a real fire lit under her ass.
Oh, that detail though. Trigger finger.
She was headed towards the old tunnels. Something about rerouting the fence.
Oh! She's gonna reroute the vents up to Piltover.
Can I get a minute?
Yes, please. Talk about it. Meanwhile...
Your first request for an audience was uninteresting. So tell me, Amara, what does a member of Piltover's Merchant Guild want from me?
Oh, I'm pretty sure we've seen this character before in season 1.
What you've stolen is more precious than any gold.
Okay. Ooh, what is happening? The flower.
Son is dead.
We know what you're chasing in Piltover. We will not allow it.
Try to stop me, insolent witch.
This is some interesting developments in the political sphere of the world.
You should have given up the feud.
You have no inkling what family is to me.
Yeah, I believe it.
We need control now.
Salo isn't ready. It's time we involve Mel.
No. We must distance ourselves. She's safer as our enemy.
Would you look at that? Safer as an enemy. Getting introduced to another threat? Something outside of the establishment.
I think we should cut the others loose.
I can't let her get away again. Are you sure you're
My
ready?
sister is gone. There's only Jinx now.
You hear it in her voice too. She was very hesitant to say that.
Everyone in my life has changed. Promise me you won't change.
Beautiful performance here. Oh my god.
I won't.
That's what I'm talking about! But the closer they are, then the more it will hurt. You know? When things get messy, so... that was a really beautiful moment though. Really beautiful scene. 3 years in the making. Alright. Let's have a word with
You
Salo.
realize how easy it was for me to track you down here.
Salo.
Maybe I'd have better uses for my time than sitting around waiting for an update on Princess Kiramman's underground escapades.
Perhaps if you hadn't let a child overpower you in your own chamber.
It's not the girl. It's the name.
Yeah.
Do you really think Mel could have succeeded with...
Never speak ill of my family.
That's twice now. But yeah, Shimmer is being used.
Rally every house and family with even a modicum of influence. Can you manage that?
Oh.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Oh.
Good to see you again, Lest.
I'm out. Keeping an eye on a counselor with peculiar tastes doesn't rattle me.
Less.
You're using me to get to her. And then what? You take what you need, hang me out to dry? I'm expendable?
No, no one is expendable.
I believe her.
If my mother gets what she wants, the whole city will suffer.
They're setting up some big announcement. All the who's who. We know who's really pulling the strings. It's made with shimmer. Leaves traces on the body. That should be all you need to shut Salo down.
That was the thing that this person was using on Salo. But this is interesting though. Also love the setting, by the way. You know, behind the scenes, backstage. Really well done. You see Jinx's graffiti there.
Victor hypothesized that there may be something he called wild runes. Patterns that would occur naturally where the border between our world and the Arcane is thin.
Ah.
So I used words you understood in order to elicit your action. This is what Hextech runes are. Pass me a tome. There, you sighed. Still a kind of language. A sound, but not words. Something raw, natural. That's wild runes.
Ah.
That pattern is on my tree because you pissed the Arcane off with all your demands?
Ooh.
That's not what I...
But I'm glad that I have an actual term now. Wild runes.
Do you think this could actually be a result of overuse of Hextech?
Ah. It's so awesome to see three of them working together here.
But perhaps it is a property of the Arcane itself.
Yes! Yes! This is what I discussed this a bit in the previous episode.
Deep under ground.
Oh, interesting. The destroyed ruins. What is that? Two figures?
Your source panned out. I've confirmed Salo met privately with members of several houses today. Of course, your mother is anything but a fool. There must be an angle I'm missing. There's a rat's nest of misinformation surrounding your brother's passing.
Ah.
Moreover, it seems they've managed to strip your mother of most of her holdings.
She's desperate, which makes her all the more dangerous.
But see, here's the thing though, like Mel doesn't know the full picture. A lot of things that she doesn't know yet.
We must be at least 200 feet below the surface.
Okay.
The entire structure is a channel.
Oh, we are moving places. Again. Vander. Vi and Jinx on the left. Oh.
If you see an opening, take the shot.
Vi?
Good shot. Yeah, now there's a different level of emotion being brought in. Stakes are higher. Whoa!
We installed a failsafe at the base.
So instead of it exploding in your neighborhood, it would blow up in ours.
And it goes down as well.
These are the same utility ducts that carry our water and facilitate our ventilation.
Inconceivable.
Cause and effect.
You say we should...
Oh!
We're the ones that get wet.
What the...
Oh! Woo!
Jinx!
A lot is happening. A lot is happening.
The name right.
Finally got the name right.
Miners trapped underground, air running thin. But then, some wispy wind woman wafts to their rescue.
Okay.
Never thought my sister would turn bluebelly.
Yeah.
Never thought mine would orphan kids.
Done it to myself enough.
Ooh.
So someone else would do your dirty work.
The child. Sevika in the back as well.
I'm done blaming myself for your mistakes. Done pretending you're my sister. You're not.
Oh.
You killed her.
Oh.
I just can't seem to die.
I'm ready.
Oh, beautiful transition.
Is that a wild rune?
I have no idea what that is.
What is happening?
You walk along the
Okay. The shot from the first opening, right? Oh, there's music though. Oh, there's so much emotion in their faces. Holy shit. Absolute cinema. Look at this! Reality is breaking apart. Their reality is breaking apart. Literally none of this makes sense, if you know what I mean. Oh! Oh no, 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 no!
What have we done?
This is one of the best, wildest, insane sequence of events that I am looking at right now. Everything about this feels personal. Is that going to react to her body though? Like the shimmer in her body?
I'm glad it's you. Had to be you.
Oh. Vi can't do it though. Oh! Isha.
What are you? Get off me!
Kate.
Oh! Insane. Absolutely insane. I was baffled for minutes there. Couldn't say a single word. Look at that. Inspiring the Undercity as well. Wow, immediately goes there. Didn't think about Vi. Jinx is on her mind.
You stopped me. I shouldn't have had to. What's wrong with you? I keep telling myself that you're different. But you're not. It's her blood in your veins.
Oh.
Then why are you the one acting like her?
Wow. Wow. Oh, it's the same thing that possessed Amara. The rose. Oh. Black rose.
Good evening.
Oh, look
Yesterday, I met with your guild merchant, Amara.
Look at the outfit, though.
When two Zaunite assassins fell upon us.
Twisting the narrative.
Dagger in the night.
I don't think she's buying it.
Half your council is dead.
This is going
Your
exactly
memorial is made a massacre.
as she wanted. Ambessa.
Wrath must be met with wrath.
She's gaining control.
You must declare martial law. Appoint a general to lead until this threat is vanquished.
And getting approval by the people as well.
Of course. I could only be referring to Caitlyn Kiramman.
Oh, chills. Chills. I knew she was gonna say that. Oh, how heavy is the crown? Her eyes.
Vengeance for your son.
Oh my god! There it is! There it is! The full confirmation. Wow, the radicalization of both Piltover and Zaun.
Come, child.
Oh! Incredible music, by the way.
Your mother will have justice. I swear it.
Oh. Oh, okay, that's Zinja's hand. Okay. Is that a picture of his daughter? Oh. Wow. Wow. I don't think I can review this immediately. I've been reviewing it. I've been reviewing Arcane season 1, episodes 1 and 2, like immediately after I was done with the reaction. I don't think I can do this with this episode. I gotta sit this one out. Might have to rewatch it. I'm probably gonna rewatch it immediately. Oh, what an episode! What an episode! What a way to end the first act of the season as well. Phenomenal. Whew. So for the first 2 episodes of the second season, I've been reviewing or discussing it immediately after I finish watching the episode. My thoughts at the time were still fresh. I may skim through some parts of the episode again before reviewing it, but ultimately I jumped straight to reviewing it on the same day. And after I was done with this episode, I felt that I needed time to think. There were so many incredible and emotional moments, macro details and minor details that have the same level of importance, right? And so many revelations and mysteries to unpack and to theorize that I don't think that I could cover and do justice if I were to start the review immediately. So I didn't. It's been a couple of days now. I'm also turning off the camera because of this. I don't want you to see a guy with an obvious injury talk for over like an hour without addressing the elephant in the room. So I also probably won't be reacting to Act 2 the day that that's released. So I'm gonna wait until I'm fully healed for that. But yeah, I have rewatched this episode and the previous 2 a bunch of times at this point. A lot actually. I've actually written a bunch of notes to make this review portion maybe a bit more concise and less all over the place like the first 2 episodes. But yeah, I will be breaking the review portion into several sections. I'll give you guys a bunch of timestamps in the comment section or in the description. But mostly it's gonna be following a scene-to-scene basis. I'll also talk about like some parts from the previous episodes as well if needed. But yeah, and before I do start, I should once again say, I am analyzing this from the perspective of a non League of Legends player. Okay, I know there is already some form of pre-established lore. I know that there is history behind some of these characters already, but I don't want to know about any of it currently speaking. As I do want to experience and digest the show, I do want to digest Arcane as a story that is standing on its own. So I am fully aware. Once again, I am fully aware that my analysis and my theories here, it could be wrong, but please keep already established lore discussions out of the comment section. Again, because I do want the show itself to explain it to me by itself, maybe hopefully in the coming episodes. But yeah, keep spoilers of already established lore, maybe something that I should not know, out of the comment section, if you please. So let me start by saying that, currently speaking, subjectively, I think this is one of the best episodes of the series. It really is. It's hard to pick a favorite here, considering the first season also had a lot of incredible episodes, so much incredible episodes, especially the final episodes, for each respective acts, episode 3, 6, and 9. And episode 9 itself, left such an impact on me when and how it concluded. And the raw, emotional, heartbreaking, and many times the evocative moments on display in that episode. But, this episode 3, I mean, Jesus, my goodness. Talk about a stellar episode of both payoff of what happened before and a masterful setup for what's to come. I think the beauty behind this episode, the beauty behind it is also within the mystery that it presents. The show has introduced, I would say, so much interesting, thought-provoking and creative possibilities in the first season alone. from our characters to the use of the arcane itself. And now I feel even more impressed by the show's developments, how it is still, how it still manages to give me that sense of magic, that awe and wonderment. And yeah, honestly, magical is the best way for me to describe this episode. This episode is magical. It's a presentation of the familiar being torn apart by the unknown, and it leaves me amazed and baffled at the same time. I cannot stress you enough like how much I love this episode. I think it is one of the best episodes of the series, one of the best television episodes that I've seen in recent times, and really, there's not much else that I could describe it other than this is exceptional television. This is cinema. One of the best direction that I've seen, from the soft and tender moments to the action sequences. My God, the pitch perfect use of both the orchestral soundtrack and the songs that adds so much emotion and raw power to the scenes. It's the incredible cinematography as well. That just, again, it just never ceases to amaze me. Borrowing from from a really fantastic YouTube channel here. Every frame is a painting. I could pause at so many moments, and all of it, I think, are frame worthy. It's really just it's really just stunning, man. It really is. There's so much visual storytelling on display at every turn, and then of course the voice performances. My God, Haley Steinfeld as Vi specifically in this episode. Wow, bravo. There's just so much emotion being poured to her character. That's elevated immensely as well by the insane micro level detail of the animation. From the facial expressions in this episode, stunning. The subtleties are on full display here. From just an eye twitch alone, for example, that itself already showcases like so much character depth and expression that couldn't really be described by words. And not to say that all of the other voice performances, all of the other voice casts weren't as good. No, they are all fantastic in this episode. They're all great. Season 2 so far, especially this episode, is just a technical marvel. It really is. And it goes to show like the brilliance and the advantage of the animation medium. There really is no other show out there that looks like Arcane. It has its own visual style and identity that no doubt, many other animated works will be inspired by. Maybe perhaps there already is and I just haven't seen it yet. But yeah, this is a very special show. A show that's constantly, pushing the boundaries of the of the medium. Like I said, it's a very one of a kind show. And once again, like, bravo, bravo to the people at Fortiche, the animation studio responsible for bringing this show, this story, this world, these incredibly layered characters to life. Bravo. But now let's go to the beginning of the episode. Visually speaking, I think it was a creative and a very stylish choice to present the opening montage with a comic-esque visual. It really is. And again, this is an excellent example of this season just really pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits, one-upping the previous season, because in season 1, yes, there was a lot of song montages, and they are excellently well crafted, excellently well. But there was one in particular, right? There was one in particular that really stood against the rest. And of course, I am talking about the Jinx and Echo fight. I mean, who could forget about that? It's an absolutely incredible sequence. And changing the visual style from the established art style. And when I watched that for the first time all those years ago, I thought, wow, like this is incredible, this is fantastic, it's amazing. And now with season 2, they are really pushing it to the next level. It's almost as if now every montage with a song has to somehow incorporate that creative visual, that creative style, that change in flair, in animation, that is just it's just beautiful to look at. Caitlyn mourning her mother in the first episode. The Cam Barons of Zaun and their decline, along with Sevika. Along with Sevika's fight in episode 2. I mean, and now here we are. Caitlyn and her task force of enforcers using the gray on Zaunites as her bloodlust for Jinx is at a boiling point. It's just an all-around incredible presentation. It truly is. I really love the use of the comic art style, or comic-esque, in this opening sequence. But yeah, let's talk about the Grey for a little bit, shall we? Now, the name was revealed in the previous episode, but here we get a clearer picture on what it is exactly in relation to the Kirammans. And yeah, I was wrong in my very early analysis of the first episode, where at first I thought this was some form of unethical use by the older generation of the Kirammans, especially from the images shown, right, of the human anatomy and those gas masks. And then, of course, the obvious classism that Piltover residences, especially those that the council has against Zaun, those were my early reasonings, my early assumptions. But, this revelation proves otherwise. The Kirammans were actually responsible for providing fresh air to Zaun, or at the very least, a breathable air. Maybe not fresh air, breathable air, more likely. But still, though, it kind of makes you wonder why this family history, this crucial information, is actually being withheld from Caitlyn by her mother, right? I mean, it is, right? I mean, obviously, Caitlyn will learn the truth eventually, and she did, but she learns this truth she learns this truth at the wrong time, at the wrong moment, because now, the Kiramman Legacy, this creation that's meant to save lives, is being used for its opposite intentions. Because now, it's being used as a weapon, right? It's a show of force and reckoning to instill fear into the hearts of the Zaunites. I mean, look, I love Caitlyn as a character. I really do. Especially in this act, in the second season, Caitlyn has really shot up my my character tier list, if you will, of favorite characters. I love Caitlyn in the first season, but this season, this second season, has really brought a lot of agency and a lot of character developments for Caitlyn that I absolutely love. But of course, every character in Arcane is never truly good or evil. We have established this long ago, and you cannot deny that what Caitlyn is doing right now, it is unethical. It really is. It's unethical. She is going far and beyond, for the sake of quote unquote justice, right? This is her vengeance being expressed at the wrong people, innocent people, because she already made up her own justification, right? By the end of the first episode, eliminate any who are still loyal to Silco, she says, because in her eyes, everyone in Zaun could potentially still be loyal to Silco. She is, and you're gonna hear me say this a lot, she is intentionally blinding herself of the truth. Um, and yeah, this is a very dark path that she is walking on. It really is. It's a very dark path. I mean, even after the montage when the task force discovered Hinot, the guy who we saw back in episode 2, tied upside down, being forced to breathe, breathe in the gray. Caitlyn was the last person to react and move to save him, right? The new recruits were the ones who immediately helped him out. Caitlyn, on the other hand, she just stood by from behind. She didn't even give an order to the other members to save him, even though she is the leader, right? She, in a way, like it's like she didn't even want to. And even then, when Hinot was being interrogated by them, Caitlyn's fingers, she was ready on the trigger, right? She has no control whatsoever on this. And it's very luckily that Vi immediately catches this on, right? She understood the situation and she immediately stepped in, basically protecting Hinot from Caitlyn by getting in her way, right? Which is also an excellent story moment, considering much later in the episode we will be getting this exact similar situation, right? When Caitlyn is about to shoot Jinx, right? It's almost foreshadowing the moment. And speaking of foreshadowing, the dolls, right, representing the enforcers hanged and killed. Yeah, I mean, really, I'm really hoping that this is just a threat that Jinx set up. But it does seem like she won't hesitate to kill anymore. I mean, Jinx was also pointing the enforcers to the right direction, right, as seen through her spray paints throughout this episode. But yeah, I'm really hoping that this new team won't be killed off. Yeah, but given their small importance right now, it's not really looking good because I do want to see more of these characters, because I'm sure we will be exploring some of these characters in the future. It's just the thought of it is just really bugging me in my mind right now, but yeah, Caitlyn's current development as a character honestly, scares me a lot more than Powder's development into Jinx. Because at least with Powder, it was almost inevitable, right, that she would become Jinx. But then again, her motivation was never about getting revenge on Vi. She still believed in her sister before this episode. We need to remember that, right? But Caitlyn, on the other hand, or the previous episode, I would say, when I'm talking about Jinx, right? Jinx still had a belief in her sister, but then once the last episode happened, and then she saw Vi coming into the old arcade store, and she is wearing full enforcer armor, and I feel like that's the moment where Jinx truly felt that Vi has left her. But going back to what I was saying, Caitlyn, on the other hand, she is driven by revenge, right? And Caitlyn has all the more reason to hate Jinx at this point. And we'll talk about the parallels between Caitlyn and Jinx later, right? Especially since Vi brought it up later in the episode. It's really striking. There's a lot of parallels in this episode and this entire arc itself that I do want to explore in this review. But yeah, interesting stuff, man. Some really interesting stuff. Which leads us to the next scene, right? Involving Ambessa and Amara. Now this is an intriguing moment in the episode. Probably the first time in the second season where I truly feel that the world of Arcane is expanding. It's actually the same feeling I had when Ambessa was introduced in the first season, right? She was an unexpected third party, if you will, that arrived towards the end, that sort of creates this small imbalance to the status quo. Specifically how Ambessa's presence, in my eyes, rapidly changes Mel as a character in season 1. And now the introduction of a new faction, a new entity, changes my perception and the overall character of Ambessa. Because here, Amara talking about Ambessa's depth, apparently, something that she stole, and in Amara's own words, something that is more precious than any gold. Now, is she talking about the gold that Mel has in her body? The one that shines whenever she's in danger? Now, obviously, we don't actually know for sure about like the properties of Mel's gold attire or body tattoos. I don't really know, actually. I don't really know what they are because they are attached to Mel's body now that I'm looking at it. But it is clear that it reacts to danger and protected Mel and Jace during the explosion at the council. And it also glowed when Mel was about to be attacked during the memorial in episode 1. You know, I was rewatching that episode and I noticed that it was glowing. It was subtle, very subtle, but it did glow. And obviously that kind of power is extremely strong, right? You're practically immune towards physical danger, right? Though not magical danger, because, you know, if Amara is talking about Mel and her gold, then they practically succeeded near the end of the episode, right? We'll talk more on that once we get there. But if it's not that, then I really don't know. That's really the only thing that I could think of that holds any meaningful value, that has any connection to Ambessa as a character and Noxus as a nation. But yeah, the Black Rose. What is it exactly? Is it a greater evil? A larger threat? Is it the name of an organization, a group? Or is it like a different form of magic, a counter to Hextech and Shimmer, perhaps? I have a theory, which I'll talk once we reach the scene of Ambessa promoting Caitlyn. But what I do want to say, before we move on, is I do love the visuals that they are showing for this new form of magic, right? This far more mystical than the technological robustness of Hextech and the chemical evolutions of Shimmer. But the way they showed us stars and galaxies in its visual presentation, yeah, beautiful stuff. It's almost like it's a cosmic entity. Now that I am thinking about it, it's both terrifying and beautiful to behold. But yeah, but you know what this scene also establishes that I find to be absolutely beautiful is that it is showing Ambessa's love and overprotectiveness of her family. She has reasons to come to Piltover, right? Reasons that the show hasn't fully explained yet. But one thing that is clear to me is that she is here to actually protect her daughter. That much is clear to me. Perhaps the only family that she has left, considering her son was killed, right? His death, I do believe, is an obvious catapult for Ambessa to do the things that she has to do. And I cannot comprehend the parallels between her and Caitlyn in the situation, right? It's almost a perfect match. The situation, these characters who lost their loved ones, who lost their family members, and are now being driven by revenge, right? It's a perfect match, like I said, which is why later on in the episode it was just goosebumps all over my body. But we'll talk about that, later on. But speaking of Caitlyn, let's talk about Caitlyn and Vi's relationship, shall we? This moment, this scene. I mean, what else is there to say? It's an incredible scene, a monumental scene as well. But it's also how the scene starts with the both of them on the opposite side. It's a visual motif at this point. The show has constantly shown how they are on opposite sides at the start of a scene, to then let them be together. Whether if it's in episode 1 of season 2, where they were on the opposite sides of the corridor, that then led to them both hugging and embracing each other, or the first time that they met each other, right? Opposite sides of the prison bar. Oil and water, right? It's a beautiful motif in visual storytelling, because it does. To me, it elicits so much emotion. The longing for someone, the desire to be with someone, and the opposition, the world that is preventing their connection, this long distance, right? And what a performance from Hailey Steinfeld as Vi as well. I talked about it before, but it's an incredible performance in this moment. It really is. I think she brought so much emotion during this scene, during this moment, through the subtleties of her voice. Right, it's very subtle, but Vi telling Caitlyn that my sister is gone. There's only Jinx now. I mean, my God, you can hear it through her voice. The unimaginable pain she must have felt uttering those words. Words that she thought she never wanted to say. Words that she could not imagine she would say. The many promises that Vi has broken throughout the series, right? She told Powder at the end of season 1 that they're still sisters. She promised Vander to look after Powder at the start of the series. It's really heartbreaking. It really is. But you also got to understand that she doesn't want any of this at all, right? She is trying so hard to adapt to her new environment, an environment that is only recent to her. We got to remember that. We got to remember that Vi spent a lot of her lifetime in prison, and having this rapid development of learning what happened to Jinx, what happened to the Lanes, what happened to her friends, her home, her family. It's absolutely a shock for her. And I cannot imagine what she is feeling right now. And now she is trying everything within her power to not lose the only person that truly sees her as a person, right? Even if it means sacrificing the ones that used to love her but no longer doesn't. At least in her own perspective, that is. Which is why Vi pleads to Caitlyn right in this moment for her not to change, because she is afraid of losing another person. She is afraid to be alone again. Caitlyn was her last hope, and for Caitlyn to answer by kissing her, my goodness, I mean, it was such a beautiful scene. It's very tender. It's really beautiful. I mean, without a doubt, one of my favorite moments throughout the whole series. It's just the poeticness of the whole situation. The if you think about it, in the midst of all of this chaos, all of this destruction, all of this anarchy, in the brink of war and divide, two characters from opposite sides, just for a brief moment here, saw together as equals and lovingly embrace each other. It's such a small moment, right? It's such a small moment compared to the macro level intensity of the political upheaval in Piltover and Zaun, but what it represents in the grand scheme of things is powerful. Because in many ways, I think Caitlyn and Vi's relationship is actually the best character representation for Piltover and Zaun's desire to find peace. And not to say that they're the only relationship that's representing this theme. Jason Victor, for example, that is another prime example, right? But it's really Caitlyn and Vi's love for each other that cements it for me as the two best characters to represent this desire for peace. It's a really beautiful relationship. It's a really beautiful connection to have between these two characters and the two nations that these characters represent, which also makes it all the more heartbreaking when it inevitably falls apart. But moving on from that beautiful scene, we have this scene where Counselor Salo is finding ways to cure his leg with the help of Shimmer. Would you look at that, right? But of course, the question is, does Salo know that Shimmer is being applied to his body, or was he unaware, right? Ignorant of the fact. Personally speaking, I think he does know. Now, the only reason why I'm asking these questions is because later on we know that that Lest, the new character introduced here, right, is secretly working with Mel, and her applying Shimmer to the counselor's leg is obviously a way of leverage, right? A blackmail, if you will. But again, I don't think Counselor Salo is that dumb, to not know that he is being applied with Shimmer. Or maybe he is. Actually, who knows, really? But let's say that he is aware, okay? Let's just say that he is aware. This show has shown this shows how small Counselor Salo's actual convictions are, right? I mean, he was the one who talked high and mighty about principles at the end of episode 1 of this season. Salo, is a character, a politician, if you will, that cares more about his image to the people and the council, while secretly he goes against the principles that he talks about. I mean, this isn't really the first time that the show has shown this, right? Season 1 had an entire scene where Jace sees who these counselors truly are behind the scenes, right? During the violin performance, they showed that these counselors are making deals that ultimately are benefiting them more than Piltover. And it's probably why, Ambessa could quickly form a temporary alliance, if you will, with Counselor Salo. It's all part of her plan, obviously, and she is just using Salo as more of a stepping stone to get to the next level. Because Ambessa, she started out as an unwanted guest, right? Who could not get to the council through Mel, is now finding her next best, best bet in Salo, and through him, she's able to stand within the council throughout their meetings. I mean, she was there underground, right? In a close council meeting, as Counselor Salo says. I mean, yeah, it's a close meeting, but he allows the war veteran from another nation who is not a member of the council to be there? Come on. And, I'm sure Mel probably disagrees with the idea, but, in times of crisis, I'm sure she was either convinced, or maybe perhaps even outvoted by the other two members, right? Of Ambessa's presence in the council. And while we are here, let's also not forget that when Caitlyn arrived to the scene, notice the change in Ambessa's face, right? Her reaction. She's obviously taken an interest immediately to Caitlyn and her show of force and confidence, right? Her show of action, something that the other council members obviously lack. But of course, I mean, Mel obviously doesn't want an escalation and use of Hextech technology as weapons. And Salo is pretty much an all talk, no action type of person. While the other counselor, Counselor Shula, I believe is her name, is I guess like sort of taking the middle ground at this point, right? But yeah, going back, continuing on with the scene as Ambessa is checking the Shimmer, the undisputed fact that she needed to know that Salo, currently speaking, is unfit for the role that she desires, right? This role of power, this leader that she can influence, that is also influential to the people of Piltover. And then, of course, the real kicker, right? Salo saying that the Kiramman name has power. That was the information that Ambessa needed for her next move. She needed that. Like I said, Ambessa has been eyeing on Caitlyn throughout the first act, but she needed enough evidence for her to continue with her plan. And coming from the words of a counselor was probably the thing that sealed the deal, right? Learning the fact that Caitlyn has a voice, a powerful voice, even, right? So she immediately tells him to prepare a meeting, right? To gather, and this is important, to gather every house and family with a modicum of influence. Yeah, she knows. She knows what she is doing, right? She knows that to influence people, you need to influence the influencers. She is a master of the art of war. She knows in order to influence all of Piltover, she must use proxies, pawns, if you will. Because I do think that time is against Ambessa here. She is in a hurry. If the Black Rose is already here to begin with, yeah. This scene also reinforces the notion of Ambessa's overprotectiveness, right? She truly loves her family, her children, and sure, her methods are extreme, yes. Coming from a land of war, right? Where might is right, where her teachings towards Mel is for her to be both the fox and the wolf, right? An impression that's obviously not liked by Mel at all. But that is the culture where Ambessa was raised. And, despite how much her words, her wisdom, her teachings, her love isn't being received by her children, by Mel, she still loves her regardless, right? And would do anything to protect her, right? Even if making Mel her enemy, as she said earlier to her main bodyguard, or her main general, I suppose, after killing Amara, right? She would fight the whole world if it means to protect her family. And it's this layer of characterization that really makes me compare her to Silco, actually. Silco was this character, an incredible character, by the way, that was presented as an antagonist, a villain that later became so much more, right? Genuinely, Silco is genuinely one of, if not my personal favorite character from season 1. He's just one of the best. Really, he is an S tier character, no doubt about that. Because it's this beautiful development of him slowly becoming the very thing he despised Vander of. This person who cares for his family, for his loved one. And Silco was given the opportunity to get his nation of Zaun in exchange for Jinx, which he declined, right? He never would have given her up, saying that even after he was shot by her. And this quality in Silco's character, this love and protectiveness that he has with Jinx, a father who would do anything to make her daughter live happily, is the same kind of quality that I am currently seeing in Ambessa. And maybe, perhaps not to the same degree, but the parallels are there. No doubt about it. Which is why I love this direction that the show is taking Ambessa's character in season 2. While she's not a villain or an antagonist in any way, shape, or form, she is, currently speaking, a force that's currently and actively taking over Piltover. And again, it could be for the greater good, right? Much like her similarities with Caitlyn within this episode, right? She's willing to do an evil act, if you will, for a good reason. Yes, she is more extreme than Silco, obviously, but she does feel like the natural next step when it comes to filling in Silco's shoes as the next major, quote-unquote, problem that needs to be dealt with. Because her role and her influence, doesn't just reach to Piltover and Zaun. No, it also extends to Noxus and the wider socio-political status of the world. I think the next scene is a perfect, it's a perfect scene to complement the previous scene, because just like her mother, Mel is also playing the Game of Thrones. I had to say it. I've been rewatching Game of Thrones lately. But yeah, but no, but honestly, really though, speaking of kings and queens and thrones, the stage play that's currently rehearsing this shot of a crown being bestowed upon the stage actors as Mel walks by. Talk about symbolism here. Because yeah, the daughter of the Noxian warlord, the disowned heir of Clan Medarda. And look now this shot, it could also have a different meaning. There is the other angle in that um this is the crown, the position of leadership that is far away from Mel, that she could never achieve. But of course, I think the most obvious way to look at it is by the context of the scene itself, because it's very on the nose. It really is. But the fact that Mel and Les are meeting backstage, right, behind the scenes of the actual play, of the actual conflict, if you will, it's a brilliant setting to showcase this. It's a really brilliant setting. Mel, who wishes to not partake in the family business, if you will, is still not moving. Is still moving and influencing from behind the scenes, right? Mel, who obviously doesn't want to admit this, but she does. She does have similar qualities with her mother, right? Mel is the fox, but she could not bring out the wolf, as that is where she and her mother's paths sort of diverge. But yeah, Mel has an obvious express distrust towards her mother. Maybe she does see herself acting and behaving like her mother, which could very well fuel more of her anger and hate, But, regardless of her feelings towards her mother, um, it is understandable, and it is also her own flaw, if you will, right? Because not trying to say, I'm not saying that flaw is a flaw in the writing of her character, but how she is written to have that flaw, her being unable to fully understand her her mother's actions, because she couldn't come to the conclusion that Ambessa is doing all of this out of her love for her daughter and her safety. Once again, Mel understands how to be a fox, but she doesn't understand why the wolf hunts and kills. And this is shown throughout the series. Mel has been instrumental at funding and helping Jace develop Hextech. Her voice is perhaps one of the loudest and most respected of the councils. She's able to climb all the way to the top through various means. But when it comes to war, she is very inexperienced, right? Very inexperienced. Should we use Hextech? Should we not use Hextech? And, ultimately her position of being anti-Hextech, in terms of its use for warfare, was heavily influenced by Jace's position, who sees it originally more as a tool for progress. So yeah. We also got introduced to a new character in this scene, Les. So far she is a very, very minor character who knows very little. So yeah, who knows if this is the last time we get to see her, or if she will get some form of prominence later down the line. But what we should take note of is how she feels that she is expendable to Mel. Expendable, right? Mel refutes that, obviously, saying that no one is expendable. And to a degree, I do believe her. But you also got to take into account Les's position. This is how Les feels. Because, sometimes, in fact, a lot of times actually, people are not aware that their actions may be perceived as something else, right? A person could be trying to teach another person a lesson, for example, but that other person feels like they're being talked down upon, right? It's all miscommunication and misinterpretation. Again, a person may think they're behaving normally, but others may see that person acting like an asshole. very common and true in this day and age, especially in social media, and very, very true in the case of Arcane. There's a lot of times, right, where this is absolutely the case for a lot of the conflicts within the show. But this is all to tie back into Mel's perception of her own mother, right? How she's unable to see the bigger picture because she could not see the frame that holds the picture. But there's also this misinformation of the passing of Mel's brother, which begs the question of what is really happening in Noxus. What really happened there, right? What was the feud that they speak of? And more importantly, who is at fault here? Because did the brother die because of his own actions against his own enemies? Or was it a blunder, right? A failure on Ambessa's part? There are circumstances behind this that could significantly recontextualize Ambessa and the Black Rose. Once again, no doubt about it. But we can only guess and theorize at this point, right? We're in the dark, just like Mel. What we do know is that Ambessa was stripped of her belongings, right? Sorry, of her holdings, actually. Now, is it possible that Ambessa's arrival at Piltover was because she was banished, right? Exiled. It begs the question, right? What's really happening over at Noxus once again? But perhaps maybe the Black Rose or whatever it is that is associated with it has taken over and removed her from her position and seat of power. But having said all that, Ambessa is backed into a corner as the conversation goes. And you know how dangerous, how irrational even one can be when they are desperate to find a small chance of escape. Because no doubt in my mind that Ambessa is driven to a corner. That much is true, and I fully believe it. I would say that Piltover is actually the representation of that corner, right? The only place that Ambessa could go to, and perhaps the means for her escape to that corner, or better yet, perhaps to defeat the ones that are pinning her to begin with. Perhaps she truly believes that Hextech is the key, this monumental technological advancement, never before seen, used on such a massive scale, a resource so valuable yet so rare at the same time. Or rather, rare in the sense of how it is used, compared to perhaps other arcanic use of magic across the world. Who knows at this point? But this, of course, leads us to the discussion or the difference even of Hextech runes and wild runes. Now, this conversation, between Jace and Echo and Heimerdinger, I mean, okay, first of all, it's just nice. It's just nice to see these three characters conversing and talking with each other. Like, how exciting is this? The only person who is missing here is Victor, which does make me wish that these four could have a conversation about the Arcane in the future. I think that would make for an incredible and an engaging scene. But anyways, in the discussion of fantasy writing, especially when it comes to writing magic systems, the show has always leaned more on soft magic than hard magic. Difference between the two, for those who don't know, is that basically soft magic doesn't require any hard or defined rules, whereas hard magic is the opposite. I say this because now we have reached a point where the characters are beginning to dissect, to analyze, to study the arcane itself on a fundamental level. Now, we don't really have a defined idea on how it all came to be, right? It just works to a degree, right? But now, as we are exploring more of the arcane, we might be introduced to certain rules, right? Certain limitations, if you will. And in the case of Hextech runes and wild runes, a form of categorization, perhaps, how Jace explained the difference between Hextech runes and wild runes, and this is just my own interpretation, by the way, is almost a full representation of Piltover and Zaun, right? Jace explained that Hextech is akin to someone using words that is easy to understand in order to elicit an action. Well, it is exactly as Jace said, right? In order to. Hextech runes represents order. Piltover, right? A city driven by rules, order, proper etiquette, decorum. Wild runes, on the other hand, was explained as something raw, natural, a kind of language that is still understood even without words. And how could this represent Zaun? I mean, simply by looking at how Zaun, leaderless as they are, they have an understanding towards each other because they all share the same struggles. There are, outliers, of course, the same way there are outliers in Piltover, but they are, as a nation, united under a shared purpose of living. It is, of course, more chaotic. There is no order. In other words, anarchy, but it exists nonetheless. In a way, it also shows how Piltover or the Hextech runes are united under an external factor, that being order and control. Like, for example, people respect each other because that's what they have been told. Hextech became harnessable because Jace and Victor found a way to control it, to tame it, to make it their own. Zaun, or the Wild Runes, are united under an internal factor, right? That being a shared feeling of resentment over Piltover, right? The people of Zaun act their way because they find it to be natural. Something that came from yourself as a person, if you will, independent from any law and order that tells you otherwise. In other words, freedom. And yet that is something that they are struggling to achieve on a macro level, right? The freedom from Piltover. And Echo also mentioned, as he was talking to Jace, how wild runes are essentially fingerprints of the arcane, right? The result, the reaction from an action, a consequence. What is Zaun but a consequence of Piltover's actions of increasing progress, right? Zaun, a city that is left behind. And now the wild runes are increasing its reaction due to the increased use of the arcane by Piltover. Zaun is ready to burst any time now. In fact, it did burst. But, poetically, I may add, around the same time as the orb doing whatever it is that it was doing. So, yeah, let's talk about that. So now we go deep underground, right, to the Hextech failsafe at the bottom of Piltover. Its position being closer to Zaun, though Jace claims that it is still far away from posing any imminent danger. It is also using the same pipes and filtrations that lead to Zaun, though. The people who design and build this area, no doubt Jace was probably the one who led its creation, were obviously ignorant to the fact, right? It's a massive oversight. And once again, showcases the written flaw of Jace as a character. This character who always seemed amazed at the wonder of the arcane, of the magic that he sees. This childlike dream and wonderment he once had that he so actively clings on to recreate. That he is blinded by the arcane's beauty to never consider its negative effects, right? It's this cling to hope, his optimism, again, his almost childish personality when he discovers and creates magic that I find absolutely admirable, but it is his naivete to the consequences that makes it all the more sad and tragic when he inevitably learns his mistakes. Echoing what Jace said to Victor as the latter is about to leave, I never asked for this, he yelled. Which moments before, he was happy, right? And relieved that his friend was alive, not knowing the consequence he inadvertently created by saving Victor. But going back to the setting of the Hextech failsafe, the design of the interior, in my eyes at least, is very reminiscent of Victor and Jace's first device to harness the blue crystal, is it not? It's poetic if it is, right? The technology that they created to harness the arcane is now, I would say, some form of vessel of destruction, right? I mean, it is. Technically speaking, it is. It is a failsafe in case the main one at the top is overloaded. So yeah, it is, technically speaking, a vessel of destruction. And even this whole situation with the arcane being overloaded and its apparent spillage, right? Its pollution, if you will, in some aspects, very much resembles a nuclear reactor meltdown, right? I mean, it's not a coincidence that nuclear fuel has been jokingly described as magic rocks, but regardless on whether it is intentional or not, this meltdown on a fantastical scale can easily be seen as a commentary on the overuse of our own supply of energy and its effects on the world in general. The lack of supervision and attention on controlling such a powerful energy is really quite a topical discussion, right? But a topic that many people tend to ignore, as, in the eyes of many, its benefits are blinding them of its consequences. An occurring theme that most of our characters are currently undergoing, right? But yeah, every cause has an effect. Every action has subsequent reactions. And once again, it's this incredible, ingenious way of storytelling where the macro level storyline is running adjacent, right, side by side with the micro level storyline, and how both are intertwined by sharing similar themes and ideas. Because I do think that this is the most interesting, the most intriguing part of the whole episode, of the whole series, even, I would say. Because this is a massive game changer. This moment right here, this discovery from Jace, Heimerdinger, and Echo, and what a set of characters to be put within the orb's vicinity, right? I mean, the show has showed me a lot of things, a lot of developments in the world and its exploration of magic. But this feels different. It genuinely feels like the first time I was amazed at how magic was shown in the world. So in that regard, I felt that magical wonderment that Jace felt when he was younger, right, while I was watching this entire sequence. But of course, there is a lot more dread, that admiration if we're talking about the context of the story. But as an introduction on on this fictional story, incredible. There is beauty in the unknown, but there is also fear, right? And with so little information, I could only theorize and guess. Like, my first big question would be, did the arcane itself reacted to the three of them entering the area? Did it show itself, presented itself towards Jace, Heimerdinger, and Echo? I mean, I briefly touch upon the idea that the arcane is still alive, right? Is alive, I would say. But is it sentient? Does it have a mind of its own? Did it allow our three characters to discover the orb? And if it did, what is its goal, right? And what even is the orb? Is it actually a wild rune? Or is it something far more greater, far more mystical? So many questions, right? So many questions with so many possible answers. But this is, of course, the beauty and the horrors of magic. It's the unknown, and the visuals on display here. I mean, my God, incredible! It's genuinely incredible. It's truly a sight to behold, and I love how the orb is not only designed to look like something that is raw, unnatural, alien to a degree. It's almost as if it's a larger, more organic version of the transform hex core that Victor uses. But yeah, these visuals, man, the psychedelic nature of it, and then of course how it changes and manipulates its surroundings, especially all the Hextech devices. It's almost as if they are being broken down to their basic raw materials, and it does seem like it's only affecting Hextech, or at the very least nearby Hextech, right? And since they are underground, it makes sense that the ones used by Jinx, Vi, and Caitlyn are the prominent ones being affected here, right? But the whole thing is just an absolute visual treat. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. And one of my favorite parts during this whole sequence, you know, was actually this moment when Jace said, "What have we done?" This realization of his pursuit of knowledge, and the negative effects of his creation. Sorry. Like I mentioned before, Jace has always been this optimistic character to me, but he is naive to the consequences, right? And in a way, this moment, this realization, it's a wake-up call for him. It's also a sad moment if you think about it, really. Jace's childish wonderment, his dream of sharing magic, this creation that he is so proud of, his legacy as a character, this gift that he created for the world, in his hopes of creating a better, brighter, and hopeful world, is now something that he must destroy. He's breaking his own dream. This is a monumental moment for Jace, right? How will he view the Arcane now? How will he view magic? Or his own creation, Hextech? No doubt in my mind that Hextech is here to stay. It's still going to be used regardless. It is a symbol of progress. But much like how real inventors of the world either loathe or regretted creating such technology that, inevitably is used as weapons of war, how will Jace cope with this? Right? It's an interesting thought, right? And the fact that Jace seemingly failed to destroy the orb, this anomaly, what happens now? We also got a glimpse of the past, right? And the wizard character, the arcane wielder. What is the connection? Was it just a visual way of showcasing how Jace discovered the arcane all those years ago and where it led in the present? A showcase of action and reaction? Or is it something far more comprehensive? Remember, the wizard used his power to transport Jace and her mother, right? And the Hextech gates are also designed as a means of transportation. So, did Jace, Heimerdinger, and Echo got teleported to another location? Another dimension, perhaps? Or even worse, another time? Could this be the beginning of time travel being introduced to the world of Arcane? Of course, there is one character that is tied heavily with time. And that character is Echo. There is an obvious connection to such a power when it comes to Echo. Come on. It's already in the name, right? An echo. And of course, we can't have many different terms for such a power. Time manipulation could be more appropriate than time travel. But yeah, Echo. He has always been associated with time. From his fight against Jinx in season 1, which, look, even at that point, I feel like it was more foreshadowing than an actual use of the power. Because if he already has that power, that would be insane to think about, right? Which is why they're still hinting us of this potential development when they showed the device with a ticking clock in the season 1 finale montage, right? When Echo was helping Heimerdinger out. But then the most obvious hint, the opening credit visuals of season 2. Like, it's gonna happen. And I feel like this orb could just be the jumpstart of that discovery. And even tying it with what Echo and Jace were discussing about wild runes. They are fingerprints, right? Things of the past that we could see in the present. It's a concept with a lot of possibilities here, and honestly, I cannot wait to see where they are going to be taking this. But in the midst of all of this, I also got to talk about Victor just for a bit, just for a brief moment, because is there a connection to Victor's power, or is he independent from the increasing demands of the Arcane? Because Victor is essentially a walking and living hex core at this point, right? That technology, this magical entity has become one with him. And I also do love how when Victor used his power to heal, you can see scraps of metal and machinery being fused with the body that's being healed, you know. And you cannot just create flesh from nothing, right? There must be some form of a equivalent exchange, if you will. And clearly, this power, it requires an immense demand of magic, right? As even Victor himself was tired from his first try. A part of me wants to say that he is independent from the increasing demand of the arcane. Specifically, because what we saw at the failsafe was mainly because of Piltover's use of the arcane, right? Thematically, I just don't think it makes sense if Victor was also to blame for this. But we will have to see. Maybe Victor is connected. Because personally, I think I would much prefer if Victor has his own problem of increasing demand, separate from the problem that Jace is currently facing. Because it would make for a fun parallel now. As both of these characters would be facing the consequences of their own attempts of creating better lives for other people. But while all of this is currently happening, I love that we are presenting the discovery of the orb with the fated battle of Vi and Jinx. It's a really nice parallel to how Season 1, Episode 3 was. The start of Violet and Powder's rift being paired with the discovery of Hextech. It's such a deliberate choice in storytelling, to once again pit the two separate actions of each other as these two plot lines merge together as one, right? Far away as they are. Just, once again, another example of the show's incredible writing. But yeah, let's talk about the setting for this fight first, shall we? An underground temple, as it seems. I do love Jinx's spray painting across the pillars, and there's an obvious story behind that. Her depiction of her lost family is one thing, but then she describes what this place is. Tales of Jana, a Wis woman who saved a group of miners trapped underground. It's obvious to me that Jinx really clung to this story, right? This fairy tale that Vander once told the sisters, at least a long time ago. Yeah, truly a long time ago, because now she scoffs at the idea, right? The idea that one day she may be saved, that one day her sister would come and free her, right? I do think that Jinx sees Jana, this wisp woman, she sees Vi within that, within her, within Jana, right? Vi is Jana in this case, right? In this scenario, the person who Jinx is waiting to arrive to save her. But alas, it was a promise broken in Season 1, right? And now it seems that Jinx is interpreting the idea of being set free slightly differently here. Because now Jinx is here prepared to die, right? And I truly believe that to be the case. She really was prepared to die. And Vi and Jinx's relationship has always been the main pillar of the show to me. Their conflict as sisters are masterfully interwoven into the larger conflict that involves almost all of the characters from Piltover and Zaun. If Vi and Caitlyn are representing this unlikely dream of a unified Piltover and Zaun, then Vi and Jinx represents the opposite. They represent abandonment, right? The never-ending conflict that with each passing episode since Season 1 feels more and more bloody and destructive. What makes this relationship far more tragic is that both sides still have that wish for peace, right? I think deep down, there is still a small part of them that care about the other, right? The younger Violet and Vi, and the powder that is in Jinx. It's just that their present selves have seemingly abandoned the idea, the hope that their younger selves are still alive. because they feel it's no longer possible. And let's also not forget Vander, Silco, and Sevika's position of never giving up her own to Piltover. And now look at Vi. Vi's current position to take Jinx, her sister, right? Making the matter worse, now Vi is on the other side. She turned blue, as Jinx said. And what a crushing betrayal this is from Jinx's perspective, right? But this is a very nuanced conflict, though. It really is. It's not as simple as it seems. This isn't season 1 anymore, where you can just blame Vi for slapping Powder and leaving her behind. No. It's not as simple, like I said, it is. This is much more than that. This is a consequence of that action, yes, but the consequence has turned Powder into the monster that Vi created, as the title for season 1, episode 9 describes. And this monster has cost the lives of many, many people, right? This truly, it is truly the cycle of violence, right? Where the one who's responsible to end it lies with everyone and not just a single person. And Vi herself has her own reasoning, right? Another tragic development for her, as she is now fooling, or rather convincing herself that Powder is truly dead and Jinx is not her sister. She is purposefully separating Powder and Jinx as two different people, as hard and as painful as she tries, right? Because it is the only way for Vi to take her on. She couldn't fight Jinx because that's her sister. She doesn't have the heart. And so in a cruel and sad decision, she abandons the fact that that is her sister. She copes with the reality that her sister is no longer the same, and so she blinds herself into seeing Jinx as nothing but a monster, a villain, a problem that she must destroy, drilling into her mind that Jinx killed Powder, and what she is doing now is avenging Powder's death, a death that Vi herself inadvertently caused. And Vi's conviction here is also feeding Caitlyn's conviction. The one person here that truly has no remorse when it comes to Jinx. And again, understandably so. It's also worth mentioning that, Caitlyn at this point was given the, I would say, the permission she needed to finally feel no emotion at all at the thought of killing Jinx. Because, quote unquote, Jinx is not Vi's sister anymore, right? I feel like Caitlyn knows that she risked, hurting her and Vi's relationship because of this familial connection, right? So as messed up as it is, Caitlyn must feel liberated during this moment, knowing or believing that there won't be any consequences to her current relationship with Vi. If she does end up killing Jinx. It's a crazy thing to think about it, it really is. And I also do love how when before Caitlyn shoots her shot towards Jinx, she sees the purple petal, right? The same ones that we saw in her garden, where she was clearly facing her trauma. Jinx is her trauma. In that brief moment, it does seem that Caitlyn, thought that she's about to end it all. Again, to be liberated of this monster that haunts her thoughts. And then, of course, Vi is closing her eyes when it happens. Obviously, she doesn't want to see it. And you can see it in the look in her eyes after it hit the decoy. I feel like she was holding back her emotions. She truly believing that her sister was shot at that moment. And you can see like a lot of fast changes in emotions throughout this whole sequence. Again, like the subtleties of the animation, right? Of the characters' facial expressions. But then, of course, the fight itself. My God, wow! It's such an incredible set piece. Again, I love the intertwinedness, is that a word? With the discovery of the orb, right? This whole sequence, honestly, deserves praise on its own. What an incredible fight sequence it is. Absolutely incredible. You know, the energy from each movement, the choreography, the expressions of the characters, the visual effects, the song that is being played. All of these components, you know, are complementing each other so beautifully here. And it's also just the overall tone of the fight. It is cool to look at. Yes, absolutely. It's really cool. Really cool. But you also feel that heaviness, right? You fully understand the tragedy of this whole situation, the inevitability that this is a fight that's bound to happen. I mean, it's been foreshadowed since the very first opening credit visuals of season 1, right? It's a mixture of so much emotion because I am rooting for all of these characters. I love these characters, all of them. And I think it is also a great sign of incredible storytelling here, right? When all of these characters with conflicting goals are all understandable to where we want all of them to succeed in some way. Yeah, and we know also that that's also practically impossible here. It's a really conflicting moment. But it is, again, like one of the major heights of the show's storytelling to me. But yeah, you know, something that also caught my eye throughout this fight was this moment when Vi breaks Jinx's machine gun, and you see Jinx's reaction here. You know, once again, sounding like a broken record, but the subtleties. You get that she is scared in this very moment. She is confused as well. She is surprised that her own sister is willing to go this far as well. Because, imagine being in Jinx's shoes. You're seeing your sibling screaming with a face of determination of your own downfall. A family who no longer sees you as someone. A person who sees you as a monster. But let's also not forget that Jinx wanted Vi to see her as Jinx, right? Let's not forget that. She wanted Vi to know that she is Jinx, and now that Vi has accepted that, it comes as a shock to Jinx, right? It's a moment where you realize that what you wanted isn't exactly what you needed, right? To Jinx, she could be searching for that gratification, right? That acceptance from Vi that yeah, she is Jinx, like I said. And now that we have reached this moment, now that Vi fully accepts Jinx as Jinx, the way Jinx wanted, suddenly it's a wake-up call for Jinx. It's a snap to reality. It's this slow realization that, yeah, there is no going back from this. And having the Hextech related tools breaking apart because of the orb, such a nice touch. A really nice touch to the whole situation as well. Because it's not just making it harder for Vi and Caitlyn to control and to make the whole fight scene, more visually striking and more intense. It's also a great way to show that reality is seemingly breaking apart. Vi and Jinx's reality as sisters is breaking apart. This incoherent mess that no one really knows how to fix, right? It's again, like it's an excellent creative touch, beautifully done and executed. And then there's Caitlyn's veracity and behavior throughout the whole fight. I mean, think about it. The proper and well-mannered, high-class citizen fighting like an animal. Ironic when Caitlyn calls the Zaunites animals right after the memorial attack in the first episode. I mean, Caitlyn here, she's really not acting like herself, in this episode. Throughout the first act, I would say. She's changed 100%. And I kept thinking about the episode title of Season 1, Episode 3, The Base of Violence Necessary for Change. Yeah, how fitting is that title to apply Caitlyn? To apply to Caitlyn in this episode, right? But yeah, Vi and Caitlyn eventually getting the upper hand, Vi pinning Jinx down, and what is sad to me in this moment is that Jinx seemingly has accepted her death. It had to be you, she says. If it's anybody else, then Jinx would probably still try to fight back, but if it's Vi, then she accepts this cruel twist of fate. And Vi herself was ready. She was prepared to deliver the killing blow, right? There was a bit of hesitation, yeah, sure, but she mustered up her resolve. And in that moment, in my eyes, is when both of these characters lost their humanity. It is the loss of loving oneself in Jinx and loving others in Vi. You know, if we're talking about the relationship of the two sisters, then I think this moment is their darkest moment. You know, they both accepted their cruel fate that fell upon them. And they decided not to fight against it, right? They accepted who they are as people, right? Their current relation, their current position. In fact, they accepted that. And in this brief moment, as I mentioned, they're not fighting against it. And it's a really dark moment, you know, a really dark moment, but brief, because in this moment of darkness, Isha, the little girl, steps in between them, you know, snapping both Vi and Jinx from their trance, if you will. And to me, it's obvious, you know, that Jinx and Isha are the new Silco and Powder. It's very obvious. I talked about it in the previous episode discussion, but yeah, you know, this development for Jinx that I find to be surprising, and yet it feels fitting, doesn't it? But I also think that Isha could be the key to bring balance back into Jinx's current internal turmoil. You know, to bring back the loving, caring side of Jinx to balance out the monster, if you will. And this isn't to say that Jinx could come back to normal. No, you know, Jinx is Jinx. Jinx, she's gonna stay as Jinx, you know. But right now, she has no one to love and to love her back. Right, her father figure is gone. Her sister no longer accepts her. So for Isha to potentially be the one to allow Jinx to feel love again, to feel that warm embrace she's been devoid of, yeah, I mean, this could be a really heartfelt relationship. You know, very similar to Silco, in fact. You know, Silco has always been sort of this dark character in the beginning of the show, but through Powder, right, through Jinx, Silco has found love again. He has found meaning, right? He has found an attachment that he is not willing to let go of. Though, you know, in this moment, I still worry for Isha's life. You know, she's not in the clear just yet. And if anything, you know, her well-being will probably affect Jinx heavily in the future, heavily. You know, again, like much like how Silco will do anything to keep Jinx alive, never abandoning her. And it's not just Jinx that Isha is influencing her here. You know, it's Vi as well is also affected by this. Her reaction, seeing this small child, you know, defending, embracing, protecting the monster, right? It could be an eye-opener to her. Perhaps a realization that Powder is still there. Or perhaps a better view on the matter would be that Powder is Jinx, right? It's the reality that Vi refuses to accept, right? But then we got Caitlyn, you know, disregarding the fact that there is a child. You know, attempts to shoot regardless. And look, I mean, it doesn't matter what, you know, it doesn't matter if she had the shot at this moment. She is endangering the kid's life. You know, she is seeing things more in a black and white manner. You know, a deliberate ignorance of the nuanced gray area. Ironic that she is also, you know, using, you know, her family legacy being the gray. Think about that just for a bit, you know, the irony of the situation here. But at this moment, you know, for Caitlyn, there is only good and evil. And this here is her own flaw, right? Her flawed way of coping with loss. She knows exactly who to blame for the death of her mother, right? And knowing the full context of why Jinx is Jinx, why Zaun hates Piltover, why there is a divide, to her, it doesn't really matter at this point. She's chosen her side, and just like a lot of the characters throughout the show, purposefully blinds herself of the bigger picture, of the truth, of the reality of the situation. Because knowing the truth runs counter to her own selfish desires. She knows this. I think all of the characters who are actively blinding themselves knows this. I think Vi knows it. I think Chase knows it. It's their way of coping, and the thing that's pushing them to keep on living, right? To fabricate their own truths, and in turn, they are trying to shape reality according to their truths in order to have that justification, right? But one thing that I also love, that's being developed starting from the episode before, is this growing relationship between Jinx, Isha, and Sevika. In this moment, you see Sevika, who is protecting Jinx, who is protecting Isha from the Grey. Like they really are shaping up to be quite a family. A family built upon loss, and it's how they are able to support each other, despite how wildly different they are. Sevika didn't like Jinx at all during season 1. Especially with how Silco treated her far more harshly than Jinx. But now look at them. They're connected through their shared affection and care for Silco, right? There is a bond, an invisible bond, but it is there for them, and they're only growing stronger because of it. Same thing with Isha, who I'm assuming is an orphan. She found a parental, or better yet, an older sister figure in Jinx. And Jinx, whose only remaining family member wants her dead, at least for a moment in this episode, manages to find these people who is willing to accept her for who she is. I go back to what Jinx said in the previous episode while talking to Sevika after giving her the new arm. It was something that I can fix, right? How about that, huh? In many ways, Jinx was able to fix the hole that was left inside of her when her family left her. When her past family left her. Despite everything Jinx was told as, the reason why she is called Jinx to begin with, right? She was able to fix something that she thought was unfixable. I don't think she has fully realized it yet, but in time I think she will, right? This dynamic between these three characters, definitely something that I am looking forward to in the future, because I do think it is a beautiful thing, this newfound family, if you will. Contrast that with Caitlyn and Vi, though, characters who are also dealing with, and coping with loss. What was supposed to be the start of a loving relationship, what was supposed to be the representation of what Piltover and Zaun hoped for, as I said earlier in the video, earlier in the review, is now completely falling apart. It's now breaking apart. It's fallen. Vi, who asked Caitlyn to never change, is not only realizing that Caitlyn has changed, but Vi herself has also changed as a character. The Violet who once hated the Topsiders, the Violet that despises the Enforcers, who is also reluctant to become one, has abandoned those principles, right? Largely due to her growing affection with Caitlyn and her growing distance away from Jinx and Zaun. Change beckons change, right? Vi's change is of course in response to Powder's change to Jinx, which is also a response to Vi's change. And thus we have this cycle of change, this cycle of progress. You cannot turn back the clock on progress. It's a constant reaction of actions that are reactions of previous actions, and so on and so forth. And just like how the cycle loops around, Caitlyn hits Vi and leaves her all alone underground. The same way how Violet left Powder alone in that fateful moment back in Season 1, Episode 3. Now the tables have turned for Vi. Now she probably understands Powder's feelings all those years ago, right? That feeling of betrayal, that feeling of losing a loved one, not because they passed, but because they abandoned you. And Vi's emotional breakdown at the end here is just tragic and depressing to me, because the difference here, there's no one to save her. Powder had Silco to give her some form of hope and comfort, but Vi is left alone, all alone, in the darkness of the Undercity, right? Completely undesired by anyone. I could not even imagine what could be going on inside of her head at this point, especially after the fact that she was engaged in a battle to the death with her own real sister. Think about this. She was about to get rid of the one she used to call family, and now she is abandoned by the one she wants to call family. It's a tragic tale, it really is. But yeah, Jinx's plan worked. Piltover is consumed by the Grey, and this is, yet again, another moment where Jinx destroys a Kiramman legacy, if you will. This time it's their lifelong work of using the filtration tunnels being used against Piltover, even though its original purpose is to help both Piltover and Zaun. Well, I mean, not to say that legacy wasn't already tarnished by the fact that Caitlyn was using it unethically at the start of the episode, but this event is probably fueling Caitlyn's anger more towards Jinx, right? Like, how dare you use my family legacy, right? But then again, of course, this is all just karma. I feel like Jinx would not have had this idea if she wasn't exposed to the Grey to begin with, right? But seeing how Caitlyn, Vi, and the Enforcers were using it on many people, innocent people of Zaun, I think that was, that was it. It was enough for Jinx to say, yeah, it's time for you to taste your own medicine, right? And it is, again, an increase in conflict. No doubt in my mind that the amount of people that was affected by the Grey from Caitlyn's task force could compare to the entire city of Piltover being gassed, And now what I am fearing is that Piltover's retaliation will cause more damage, severe damage to Zaun, possibly the largest potential casualty Zaun will face since perhaps the bridge incident all those years ago. But what Jinx has done here is that she is inspiring the Zaunites, right? I don't think it was her intention at all for such a thing, but the effects should not be ignored. I think this is the first time that Zaun seemingly has the upper hand. The people there will surely be inspired by this, and with the increase of enforcers and the declaration of martial law, it's the break of all-out war here, and it's only gonna get worse. But in the meanwhile, we got the Black Rose again, and this whole scene was honestly surprising to me. It was surprising. I did not see this coming at all. It was so sudden, which of course adds more to the tension, and I think it effectively makes this also a terrifying problem, right? It presents itself as a terrifying problem because they are not messing around here. And what exactly happened to Mel, right? Was she consumed by this entity? Transported, perhaps? Keep in mind, that Mel was close to the truth behind her mother's dealings and the troubling situation over at Noxus, but was taken away at this exact moment, at this exact time. Is this all just coincidental timing? Or does the Black Rose not want her to find out the truth? And if what I said earlier was true, in that the Black Rose wanted to get Mel and her quote-unquote gold, then does that mean they've won? I mean, I don't know. Regardless, they now have the upper hand against Ambessa. They have a bargaining chip. Mel is a hostage now. And how will Ambessa react to this once she inevitably finds out? She's only going to further escalate the conflict between Piltover and Zaun, right? And if this is the case, then she has to take control of a sizable force, right, before she continues her plan. But yeah, going back to the presentation of the Black Rose, the magic, or I guess the witchcraft that is being presented here, is it a different form or a different use of the arcane? Or is it based on an entirely different form of magic outside of what we know? Right? A different rule, perhaps. It's exciting nonetheless, though, to be introduced to a new form of magic, a new system of power. And speaking of power, this scene of Ambessa talking to the major houses and families of Piltover, and later, her advocacy of Caitlyn as the new the new general of Piltover. My god, it's such a powerful scene. The music that was playing in this moment as well, incredible. It's foreboding. It really is. It really does feel like a major power play by Ambessa. But this action that she caused Caitlyn becoming a general, yeah, I got goosebumps rewatching it. It's really that powerful. And powerful in the sense that this is the dawn of something truly terrifying. This is the point of no return. Well, I mean, there's a lot of points of no returns in the series, but this is the first time that it's felt on a macro level, because this isn't just the fate of some characters, right? This is the fate of all the people of Zaun and Piltover, and maybe even beyond the two cities. Of course, we finally got the reveal of Ambessa's role in the memorial. I mean, it was pretty obvious that she had something to do with it. It was plain as day, but this begs the question once again. What is Ambessa's true goal? Again, we can have an idea of it, all speculation, of course, but it does seem like she wants to take control, or at least have a powerful voice to direct Piltover, in preparation for a much greater threat. But there is the other angle in that maybe she's doing this for her own protection, her daughter's protection. What if she is fleeing Noxus? Because again, the information that we know, that she is stripped of most of her holdings, but whatever is the case, her enemies are far, far greater and far more powerful than she is currently. Ambessa as a character, she brings a lot of the social, political status of the world of Arcane. She's opening the door to new possibilities with her presence, which I greatly love, by the way. Because now I do know that this season of Arcane will be the final season of this current story arc, right? But there are apparently plans for the showrunners to explore other parts of of the world, which, first of all, is something I greatly admire. The persistence of, no, we've written this story and we want to end it exactly as planned. They could have dragged the story further with these characters, but all good things, must come to an end. And if the writers believe that the next 6 episodes is enough to give a conclusion to this arc, then hey, so be it. I respect that. Second of all, the idea of exploring new places, new characters of this world. I mean, I don't know where they're gonna go next, but I would not be surprised if they continue this by exploring Noxus, right? It's the easiest conclusion, right? Ambessa's introduction here is the perfect springboard to explore that side of the world, and the fact that we have this Black Rose entity as well. I mean, I'll be surprised if they manage to explore that aspect extensively this season, but I highly doubt it. But yeah, jumping back to the scene, I love the emotions that the animators are showing for Caitlyn here. You see her surprise, her doubts, her wariness. She's as shocked as many of the characters there, maybe more shocked than Salo. But it's also this emotional state that is being manipulated to push her into accepting Ambessa's suggestion, right, for her to be the new general commander of Piltover. It's a monumental decision for her to take, a very calculated risk by Ambessa, of course. Though I also think there is a little bit of societal pressure here driven towards Caitlyn in the situation. When you have everyone banging their chests in support of you to be their leader, when some of your squad mates, not all of them, of course, are supporting you as well, it's an external push, right? But it is one that she accepts internally speaking. I mean, this coming after the death of her mother, the misuse of the Grey, her failure to kill Jinx, and then, of course, in her eyes, Vi's betrayal. We gotta think about that from her perspective here as well, right? Caitlyn believed that Vi was different, that she'd willingly go to her side fully as an enforcer. But of course, that is clearly not the reality here. Vi still stopped her. Vi still sees Jinx as her sister. Or so Caitlyn believes. In a way, Caitlyn was trying to convert oil into water, right? You cannot do that. You cannot convert oil into water. And all of these failures that Caitlyn has suffered has done nothing but push her to the brink. She's more committed than ever now, and now that she had lost her only meaningful connection to Zaun, of course I'm talking about Vi here, there really is nothing that is stopping her. You know, like these past 3 episodes, Vi has always been the one that pulls Caitlyn back down to reality, comforting her, right? She was her anchor, and now that Caitlyn has broken loose that anchor, really, there's nothing stopping her, like I said. So now Caitlyn has this immense responsibility behind her back, right? It's a daunting task, a difficult task, a heavy task, if you will. You know, how heavy is the crown indeed? And not just Caitlyn, but Ambessa as well, right? It does feel like Caitlyn is serving more as the quote-unquote the punching bag in case something terrible happens, so the blame won't immediately go to Ambessa. But that's my own line of thinking here, you know. But, you know, like, let's be real here. You know, even though Caitlyn's the new general, Ambessa is still the one pulling the heavy strings, right? And of course, you know, again, like, judging from how Caitlyn is in the opening credit visuals, it's clear to me that this is a heavy burden. You know, the heaviness of the crown is too much for her to handle. I do have a feeling that Caitlyn will eventually break down from the immense pressure in the future. Especially if she fails yet again to protect Piltover from another attack from Zaun. You know, a more united Zaun, perhaps. And I also think that when that time comes, Vi will be the one to pull her back again. But the question is, of course, who's going to be seeking who first, right? Unless, of course, if Caitlyn discovers Ambessa's true goal, because that would result in a completely different scenario. And last, of course, we got Singe, his continued experiment on this monster, this monstrous creation. You know, we've been getting glimpses of it all over the course of this first act. So I do wonder if this payoff will be something that's explored in the second act, or are we saving this for the finale? But you know, this monster that Singe is creating, I think I have an idea on what, or more importantly, who it is exactly. I mean, it's long been speculated by many that this could be Vander, right? Or at the very least, the body of Vander. I believe I briefly touched upon it in the first or second episode discussion. I could be wrong. But yeah, this idea that Vander, you know, the person who stands as a figure of morality, of the loving care of humanity, this father figure who, you know, this father figure to not just Vi and Jinx, but also as Zaun, right? Also to Zaun, I mean. Let's not forget how respected Vander is. You know, even Silco acknowledges this by the end of her, by the end of his life as well, right? So it would be a cruel twist of fate to have Vander's legacy be ruined here, you know, to be destroyed by this monster that Singe created, that Singe is creating. You know, but of course, you know, that's still in the realm of speculation at this point. We don't really know. But Singe himself as a character, you know, he intrigues me. He really does. We don't really know much about him except, of course, for a few flashback sequences with Victor. But it's also this daughter figure he once spoke of to Silco back in season 1. That's really the part that is interesting to me because, you know, of course, like, I do want to know more about this daughter that he seemingly holds dear, but for the time being, we'll never know, right? Overall, this episode and this first act was incredible. Like I said, I really love this first act. It's beautifully directed. It's wonderfully presented. The intertwining themes between the characters have never been this strong, in my opinion. And this first act really set the standards for what's to come. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening in. If you made it this far into the video, then I really appreciate it. If you do enjoy the video, then, you know, hit like, subscribe, you know, if you haven't, so you won't miss the next time I upload my reactions. I will see you all next time. Everyone, take care. Have a nice day.